does something completely off the wall. But yeah, so just look out for that, and usually, always keep them paired and indented. It's a good practice. So variables are, well, they're more or less like they are in any language, but as I said before, they're loosely typed. So all of those are valid and all valid in the same script, and it'll change type as needed. So you've got like a string, an integer, and a float all there, and it will just change the type and as it needs. And it doesn't complain about that. Now, if a variable isn't declared, it's treated as a string, and string content is the name of the variable. So if you haven't got anything in the variable my name, and you try to print it, you'll get capital my name. Okay, so that's what it contains. That's any variable that's undeclared, it just defaults to that. That's an ARexx thing. That's a rex thing actually. So if you assign it and then say my name, then you get the output that you might expect. But it's kind of a way of debugging, I suppose. If you're getting loads of capitals in your output, it looks like you're using a variable that hasn't been touched, Okay, so when you want to talk to other applications, the inter-process communication, it's basically communicating between two tasks. So, an Amiga-DOS task will open a port, and like at a low level, these are binary messages that are sent between tasks on the Amiga OS. So below the level of ARexx, the entire OS is sort of built on these messages. So you get a message for an intuition event, for moving a window, for when a gadget is clicked, all that kind of stuff is all events, they're all these messages that are constantly flying around in the Amiga OS. Now they are all going between message ports. And they're low level, and they're basically binary based. And what it is essentially you build up a data struct, and you send the address of that data struct to the receiving bit of code, the receiving task, and that makes them very, very fast and, like I say, fundamental to how the whole OS is nailed together. ARexx basically takes it's like a translation layer. It uses those same message ports, but it uses them in a different way, and it means that it takes care of all the translation between what you're doing and what the tasks are expecting. So you can send all the messages plain text, all the addresses are plain text, so you don't have to worry about memory addresses or file handles file handles is a bad example, but message port addresses, message structs or anything like that. It handles all that for you. You basically send a text message. And you do pay a penalty for that convenience. It means it's a bit slower because it does all the compiling of message structures and stuff like that in the background. But the convenience it offers is fantastic for that. And unless you're doing like really heavy calculations with it, you're not really going to notice the slowdown. So ARexx specifically, the ports, each task that opens a port has to open with a unique name. So if you've used ARexx at all before, you'll see that if you run two copies of an application, say YAM, you get like YAM.1, YAM.2, and they're your ARexx ports, because each port needs to be unique. For obvious reasons, so that you know where the message is going or where it's coming from. So you can create them from applications, but you can also create a port from script. So you can write a script that creates its own ARexx port, so therefore becomes a host, so that the script is actually a host in itself, and can then react to messages and do other things based on that. And you've got a special port called command that's sort of built into the OS, and that's Amiga DOS. So any commands, any messages you send to the command port automatically get sort of sent to Amiga DOS, and you can run any executable like as you would from the shell. So that's quite useful for scripts. Means you can more or less do anything that Amiga DOS can and more. And there's another special port actually that I didn't mention there, which is rex, but that's rex itself, and that's it's more of a sort of so it's just because you have to have a name on it, just so that something's going through. You don't really deal with that port itself because it's sort of automatically done. So you don't need to worry about that So each message is basically a line of text. So it is like sending a mobile phone message. It's a single line. It's kind of basically as long as you want, and can have as many words or as few words or anything in it as you want. It is possible to reply, and normally at a low level there's always a reply to acknowledge a message, but you can optionally get some replies from programs, so you can send a message that query something like how many files are open or how much RAM is free, that kind of thing, and it will respond with the value of that. So there are two variables that are used for that. There's the return code variable, which gives you error messages. That's a variable called RC. So that always gets the result as usually 0 if the command was successful. But the results variable stores an actual answer from the host. Now, a script, if you send a message and it's waiting on something in the results, it'll hold on. It'll pause execution until that result arrives. So that's why results are optional. So by default, you don't actually look for a result. You just send your messages and assume it got there, and you get an error message if it didn't. So so basically it means that hosts normally have to reply straight away. So if you send a message that sort of requests a file to be opened or something like that could take some time. It's probably not a good idea to do that. So usually you send a message and then later on you'll query to get the results of that. So it's just a minor thing. You can wait if you want, if there's no. If you've got nothing else to be doing with your script, that's fine. It'll just pause and wait. But usually a script will sort of expect and a host will expect an instant or near instant answer. So that's that. And then usually a message you send is more often than not it's a command and parameters. So what you would basically what that command is depends entirely on what you're sending it to. So, in YAM, again, I keep using YAM as an example, but YAM has a very powerful ARexx port. You can do pretty much anything with it, but you can open a new message and send it. So all those commands make a lot of sense to YAM. They make no sense to Workbench, because that knows nothing about emails in itself. But basically you need to look at what's supported by an actual application, and usually documentation is very good with any application that you get. It's usually kind of quite a comprehensive list of all the commands and how to use them, and usually you get some example scripts as well. So it's worth taking a little bit of time to read the documentation. Usually an Amiga guide or something like that is provided that lists everything. So sending an ARexx message, right? You've got the address command. This is how you tell it where it's going. So this sets the command, sets the ARexx host that you want to send messages to. So once you set that, that's it for the rest of your script. Everything else goes there until you change it again with another address command. Basically anything that comes up in your script that ARexx itself doesn't recognize gets sent to the host. So in this example, list select isn't an ARexx command in itself, but that's something that YAM understands. So when ARexx gets to that point in the script, it says, oh, I don't know what that is. YAM is my current host. I will send it to YAM and see what it knows about it. And so that's how that works. That is, if you're doing that a lot, it is a little bit slow because ARexx tries to interpret the list select command first. But if you put the whole message in quotes like that, it just ignores it and straight away knows that that's to go to the host. So it doesn't even try to interpret it; it just sends it straight to YAM. Now, a couple of conventions. Now, this is fun. ARexx is case sensitive, but it doesn't look like it's case sensitive. You can send messages and use addresses in upper or lower case, and that is because it converts everything to capitals internally. So, address YAM. Like basically, if you see by convention, all ARexx ports are in capitals. So if you write that in your script, that will get internally translated to capitals, and that will work fine. If you do that, it gets converted to capitals, and that's fine. If you put it in quotes, it will try and find a lowercase YAM, and that won't work because it doesn't exist. So it is case sensitive, but by convention, everything's capitals and everything's converted to capitals, so you don't really need to worry about it except in special cases. String joins are basically as simple as you can get. So they're basically, you can join, like my name is, and then a variable onto that just by putting them side by side on a line, and that's it. It's as simple as that. It's very, very simple and neat. Where it gets a little bit more complicated if you have quotes in there, but that's something I'll touch on in a minute. And the not operator is a tilde. So unlike C, where it's an exclamation mark, if you're doing a not, like an if or any kind of operation like that, you use the not equal to is tilde equals. It's one of those things. Now, quotes. You saw there I'm mixing up some single and double quotes. They can both be used, and ARexx doesn't care which one you use, but they should be matched, so obviously you can't start a string with one and end it with the other. So they're both the same thing as far as ARexx is concerned, and they both equate to that once you print them out or once you do anything with them. And what that lets you do is it lets you put quotes within your string very, very easily. So that will print out as hello with world in quotes. It gets really fun when you start doing things like this. So you've got a world variable contains Earth, and then you construct a string using that world variable. So you've got your single quote starting, you put a double quote in that, close out the single quote, and that brings you out of the string altogether. You add on whatever's in the variable world, and then you use a single quote to add a double quote on the end, and that will print out that. So it can very quickly get very messy, but once you sort of keep everything nice and neat and build it up in sort of layers, you can get pretty much any kind of combination you want of quotes and apostrophes and anything in your strings. Now, ARexx has it's a whole bunch of key commands that are built in, but you can add extra functionality to it by opening libraries. So it supports Amiga libraries, well, certain Amiga libraries that have ARexx capability. But one of the key ones is req support.library. That's provided with the OS. That gives you extra functionality, like being able to directly read and write memory. It lets you create ports so you can have your scripts as hosts, and a few other kind of key functions. But that's part of the OS, and it's on every ARexx installation that you find. You can download third-party libraries, like there are GUI libraries like MUI, MUI. There's GADTools library, so you can build an actual, fully functional point-and-click application with ARexx using those libraries. And you download them. They all have good documentation and good example scripts. And there are actually quite a few tools on Aminet that are built that way. And there's a TCP/IP library, so you can give it network capability. And there's actually an ARexx web server that you can download, which is quite a nice little thing because you can use ARexx scripts as your server-side scripting, and that's cool. Running a little server on the Amiga, completely bonkers security-wise, but it's a clever little thing to do. Okay, so opening an additional library. Opening an additional library. There's an add-lib function. Now, libraries are a bit funny. On the Amiga, like proper, if you're opening the library through the OS, you'll open the library, and whether it's open or not, it's either if the library exists and whether it's open or not, your program will just get access to that library, and it'll be the same copy of that library in memory. That doesn't work with ARexx. So if the library is already opened, it's already opened by RexMath, not by your script, and that means it can only be opened once. So once your first script opens a library, it's available for other scripts to use, but they can't open it. So what you have to do is you have to check if the library is open, and that little bit of code there is how you do that. So the show function in ARexx basically takes two parameters. The first one is a keyword, or even just the initial of the keyword, and in this case it's libraries. So, and then the second parameter is the library you're looking for. So L for libraries, and then req support the libraries, and that will return positive if the library has already been opened by ARexx. So if it hasn't been opened, so you've got if not show, then we do this, and then we try to load the library, and if that doesn't work, then we quit the script with exit 10, and that gives you an error 10 Amiga-DOS error level. So your script will quit and say you can't go any further because you can't open the library. We've got some funky numbers on the end of the library name there. Don't worry about them. Basically, if you read the documentation for a library, it'll tell you what to put there. These are offsets and things like that kind of that ARexx needs to used because it has a special entry point into the libraries. If the library is ARexx compatible, it'll have those numbers in the documentation. So you just just put them in. Don't worry about it. Okay, and open a port is actually similar, done in a similar way. The open port function. So it obviously must be unique, and if you try to open a port that already exists, it'll fail. So similar idea. Basically, what you can do is you can do a show command, but this time instead of L, you're using P, which lists all the ports, and you're looking for a test port. And then if it's not available, then you can try and open it. And if you can't open it, then you can exit and drop out of that. And then in an if-then loop in ARexx, if you have to end the first loop or the first block before you can start the else block. And so each of them is a separate do-end loop. So you have to bear that in mind. It's quite easy to forget to put that end there because in a lot of other languages, well, in basic anyway, you can do your end if is only at the end, so you do an else in between. You have to have the end there, and that's a sort of that's a trap that'll cause you all sorts of problems if your script does if you forget that and your script starts doing both branches of the if command or of the if check. But so that lets you drop out of the script if there's already a port existing with that name with a nice error message instead of just a cryptic error 10 or whatever. Okay. Receiving messages. So if you want to receive a message in your script, there's a wait packet function, and that basically pauses your script until a packet arrives. And a packet is just a packet is basically contains an ARexx message along with the other admin stuff that you don't really need to worry about. So when a packet arrives, you can get it with get packet, and you assign that to a variable, and that variable then contains your packet. And then basically this is what a script will look like. So there's a do until loop, and you would just use a quit variable to keep track of whether we should keep going or not. So basically, wait packet is a function. So normally it will be assigned to a variable, but we're not interested in that. It's just a sort of a formality here. So instead of assigning it to a variable, we use the call keyword, and that lets you call a function without needing to return a value. So that just basically says we don't care what you return. We just want to wait until the message arrives, and then you get your packet stored in the packet variable. If it's not a null, then you can go and process that. And the message variable then uses the getArg function to get the actual message that extracts it from the packet. You can print that out with the say command, and then we check if it contains the word quit. Then we set the variable quit to 1, and that'll exit us out of the loop. But at the end of all that, if it's a valid packet that we got, we have to call reply, because otherwise the sender will or might be sitting there waiting on a reply that never happens, and then we'll freeze that program basically. So even if you know the sender isn't looking for a reply, it's a good idea just to reply anyway, because you don't want something to freeze just because it's sitting there and someone's forgotten to switch on that option. So that's basically it. That's a simple loop that sort of sits there and says whatever you type in, or prints out whatever message it receives until it receives a quit command, and then it quits it. In the call reply packet 0, so that's just sending that again without wanting a response. But packet is obviously the message that came in, or the packet that came in, and then 0 is like a return code. So you can set that number to anything, and then it'll report an error code to the host that sent the message. Usually you just say 0 for successful. Okay, so that's kind of the basics that I'm going to cover. So I'll just go through a couple of things here where you can get more information. The key thing is Workbench came with a very good ARexx manual, but only if you bought a very, very expensive Amiga or you bought the OS by itself. If you bought a 1200 or 600 or 500, you didn't get the ARexx manual, or usually not. Some people did, but usually it's usually you only got the Workbench manual with your Amiga if you got one of the lower end ones. So it's actually rare to find it, but they do float around. They do show up on eBay every so often. But if you have any of the newer versions of the OS from 3.5 on, it actually has a whole manual in HTML on the CD, and it usually has a little web browser you can use as well to read it. And and it's available on wiki.amigos.net. So it's all the ARexx stuff is there. That the wiki.amigos.net is primarily OS4 related, but the ARexx is all unchanged except for one or two things with Workbench itself. So all the commands, all the references and stuff that it has there, all the example scripts, they're all fine, and that's a great resource. There are places you can find the actual a direct copy of what's on the 3.5 and 3.9 CDs, like the original HTML version of the manuals. You can find that online as well. That's there. This is a book that I have, and I've had for about 20 years, and it's all broken along the spine because I've used it so much. It's a great book. But if you can find it, or if you see it at any of these things, pick it up for, hopefully not for much, but it's a great book. It's really, really good resource, and that's, like I said, I've used that book for about 20 years. It's fantastic. And it was one of these ones that you could buy through Amiga format. And one of these, you could order through the magazine. So it's a very, very good book. Obviously, you had a print at this stage, but if you can find it, yeah, pick it up. And then application documentation. So, like I'm saying, anything like YAM, Personal Paint, Workbench, they all have their own separate documentation for how the commands work, what to do with them, example scripts, things like that. And then if you look at the scripts that a lot of applications come with, or you can download scripts from Aminet and that, if you just take them apart and have a look at how they do it. So if you want to see how to line up icons in Workbench, there are scripts that do that. And you just have a look, open it up in a text editor, and have a read of it. And that's it's a very, very easy way of learning. Yeah, so there's an actual directory, util/rex on Aminet that's just full of hundreds of ARexx scripts. Simple, complicated, huge scripts, or small little 3-line scripts. It's a great resource for learning how to do all this stuff. So,
are you going to share this presentation?
I can. Yeah, absolutely. It's a Scala presentation, so if you want, I can stick that on in a card reader for you. And
this whole thing will be uploaded to YouTube after Amiga Ireland too.
Oh, there you go.
Awesome.
That might be
Amiga
easier.
Retro Gaming is the name of the channel.
But besides that, I love that.
Oh, cool. Yeah, absolutely. You can have a copy of the Scala script if you want. No problem.
Cool.
I do have a couple of example scripts that I was going to go through. I wasn't sure of the setup here, so it was possible that people might have had Amigas and stuff set up here and ready to go. We don't. But a couple of people have laptops and stuff like that. But I did have, basically, the idea was to create two scripts that could talk to each other and send one script based on the segments that you already saw in the presentation. It's a little more than sewing them together. But I can go through them here now anyway, and just quickly. And the idea was to have a server that would sit there, print out the messages, and quit when you wanted it to. A client that would let you send messages, and then to add some extra stuff if we had time, basically sort of checking, doing extra checks and extra robustness things, and to simulate return codes.
So for ARexx to work, do applications actually need to be live, or can applications also be booted through some kind of interface that is resident in the US or something?
Well, that's the thing. Once RexMaster's running, ARexx is live. It's running in the background. So all you need to do is create a script and then run it with the ARexx command, or you can just set the script bit and run it as just run it from its name, if it's in the Rex directory.
Yeah, but I would say RexMaster to actually know how to fire up an application and the specific.
I see what you're saying. So if you wanted to start, let's say, WordWorth.
Yeah.
Well, you use the basically what you do is you look for the WordWorth port. So if not show p WordWorth, and then you can run address command, and then run the WordWorth executable.
Right.
It's as simple as that.
Yeah.
And then you can do loop until the port appears, and then carry on with your script.
Cool.
And it really is quite simple and quite powerful like that. You can and then you can even do it so that it waits for 10 seconds or whatever, and if it hasn't appeared by then, give an error message saying WordWorth's not installed or whatever. You can make it as robust as you like, with all your error messages saying files are missing and stuff like that. But yeah, that's how they usually work. So the first script was basically, that's kind of the stuff we saw, and that's your script there with a comment at the top. I haven't commented in, but that's all it takes. Well, that's to start up the, to set it up and get it ready to go. And that opens a port called test server. And then the second part of it is the actual processing of the message that arrives. And again, it's basically what I went through there. The only extra thing here is there's a command variable. And so basically what this does is use the upper function to get the first word of the command. So if you've got a string that has open file, whatever, so the first command will be, the first word of that will be open, and you can get the first word with the word function. So you put in your string and whatever number word you want, and that'll return that. ARexx is actually very, very good at dealing with strings, and it has a lot of functions for dealing with extracting strings, and you can I haven't touched on it here, but stem variables are basically like a struct in C. You can basically split a string up into word.1, word.2, word.3, and it's quite intuitive like that, and it's very, very good for interpreting strings and interpreting plain text. It's actually very easy, very powerful, and makes it very good for for quite elaborate Amiga scripts. But yeah, so that basically takes the first word and treats that as command. So you can have the first word will be command, and it checks that to see if that's quit. So you could have even quit and other stuff after it, and it'll still recognize that as a quit message. But yeah, basically that's just what we covered before. And then the client script. Basically, the only new thing here is we're doing them to a quit. So it's the same idea as just a quit loop, do loop. At the start, we set the address to test server, because that's what our server script is, and we give a little prompt, say text to send, and then the parse pull message. So what that does is that parse pull is basically it takes from the standard input. So that's your shell. So whatever you type, press enter, and that string will be stored in the message variable. And then message by itself is just interpreted because ARexx doesn't understand what a message is. It then looks and says, okay, fine, I'll send that to the host. But because message is a variable that contains the string, it sends that string to the host. So whatever you type in, if you type quit, it will send quit. It won't send MSG unless MSG hasn't been used yet. Like that's where this variable default into a string comes in. So it's all very neatly tied up in that string handling. But yeah, so all you have to do is just literally put the variable on the line, and it will send the variable contents to the host. And then the RC variable is returned from the host, usually 0. So that'll say message returned 0, unless there's an error, and then it'll be a 5 or 10 or 20 or whatever. And we just say if upper message equals quit, then we quit this script as well. So if you type quit, it converts it uppercase so that it doesn't have to check if it's all the different cases, and then both scripts should just quit at the same time. Yeah. Remember? Oh yeah, this is just other stuff to add. Was that's how you do a switch kind of statement or a case select kind of statement. In this it's select when, but it's kind of treated like each when is like an if command. So it's a then do or loop or a then on the same line. So that should make sense to everyone. Does that make sense to everyone?
You've got a question from the chat, Rob.
Oh, right. I didn't realize there was a chat.
Oh, yeah.
Excellent.
It says, can you make GUI scripts that feel like real workbench programs with ARexx?
Yes. They won't be as fast as a full executable, but you can, and you need to use, there are external GUI libraries that I covered earlier. So there's an MUI one or a MUI one. There's a GAD tools one. There's probably a class act one as well, reaction. But yeah, so basically you can download these libraries, open them as a library, and then you build up an application based on that. Now it's quite involved, as in you do have to do your almost like an event loop kind of thing. But yeah, it's very, very easy. And there are some, like I'm saying, there are a few tools that actually have their own GUI, and if you download them and take that script apart, that's probably a great place to start, because that's already sort of up and running and working, and just tear out the bits you don't want and put in bits that you want, and that'd be the way to do it.
Thank you.
Yeah. So yeah, this was just additional stuff that we would have added to the server. So this is to sort of to deal with error messages. and deal with different commands. So if you send the hello command, so if you, the idea was that the server, the client would send hello and your name, and at that point then this would decide to respond to that specifically with and hello to you, whatever your name is. So that works fine. And if you've got command error, that it would simulate an error message by returning basically by returning the error code instead of a 0. So you send a message with error 2, it will return the error code 2, just to show you how that works. What the data type function does, this isn't actually graphics data types, this is the variable data types. Because a variable can be dynamically typed, you can basically, it's similar to the other things. You've got this keyword in there, which is the W for whole number, and that will return true if the variable error is a whole number. So if you try and type nonsense as an error message, it won't return because it has to be a whole number, and so it'll just set it to 0 then in that case, so that you don't get a real error message, if you like. That's your otherwise is your default, or your that's it. So that's what happens if none of the previous cases are satisfied. And then we were going to add to the client just some checks to see if the port already existed, and that sends a special message to say what is your name, and so it just tacks on your name onto the hello message, and that hello command is sent to the server in the same way. Just the same way as before. It's just sort of a little bit more elaborate. And that was it. So any questions on any of that?
Thanks.
All happy? Okay. I do have the example scripts that I've shown you there. If anyone